You
No.
conceded that the term significant means having meaning. Can you explain how the reforms that you have instituted are reforms that wouldn't have meaning?
Hey everybody, tonight we're debating whether or not SNAP benefits need significant reform, and we're ready for you, First Amendment.
Okay, food stamps or SNAP. Does it need significant reform? What reform needs to be done? Well, number one, it's kind of working as intended. But could there be improvements? Well, the answer is yes.
Do you agree with just the terms to define the term? Did you agree with the term like significant? Is that fine with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to use a colloquial definition.
Yeah, it's just like
it sounded like you
have meaning or likely to
definition.
to have meaning or to have a likely influence or effect. So you've conceded the prompt in your opening statement then?
Conceded the well, I was hoping to have a discussion.
No, I'm more than willing to continue to have a discussion, but the prompt was, do SNAP benefits need significant reform? And you spent the entire second half discussing the reforms that need to be implemented.
Yeah, I mean, there's like some level of reform that I would agree with that need to be modernized, but I don't think it needs significant reform. I would just add features to it.
You just conceded the definition of significant was having meaning or having likely to influence.
Yeah, I'm not intending to get this like on a gotcha. What I was kind of hoping that we can like discuss the policy as opposed to like
I have no problem
with
that
debate or lost.
That is completely fine. I don't mind discussing it absolutely.
Right. Cool.
But
so
I just wanted to get
stuck on like
I just wanted
game,
to
right?
no, it's not a game. I just wanted to start off saying the prompt that was suggesting to us, you're admitting that yes, the affirmative is true. We need significant reform. That's it, and then we can move on. I won't come back to it. Just say yes.
I wouldn't call it significant. No.
Okay, so
the
then
reforms that I've presented are all
you've conceded the definition
with just tiny changes, and it would not require significant reform.
You conceded that the term significant means having meaning. Can you explain how the reforms that you have instituted are reforms that wouldn't have meaning?
So I would say like, I don't know if I would go that direction again. Like I didn't really want to play a definitional game with you.
That's fine. Just say you're right.
Like the particular policies, if that's okay.
No. That's absolutely fine. I was just getting you to say, yeah, you're right. We do need significant reform now that we've moved on and we both agree with that.
I don't agree. I don't agree. I think that SNAP is probably one of the most effective government programs out there. And it has stunningly low levels of fraud. There already exist great deals of investigation towards instances of fraud. It works very well. I mean, out of all of the programs that we could have picked, SNAP is probably the model government program that results in huge benefits.
Then you will
the only thing that I would do is I would do slight changes to it. And I listed those slight changes.
So just to be clear, when you talked about reforming the thrifty, or I'm sorry, what was the term, the first term you used, the thrift, something like that. Then you suggested reforming the work requirements. Then you suggested reforming the benefits cliffs and all of that stuff. Those are basically, we don't have to worry about that. You'll be defending the status quo and I'll be defending the reforms I've instituted. Fair?
Well, I'm not arguing the status quo though.
Then you're arguing for significant reform.
No.
Okay, define that. Are you arguing for reform?
Sure.
So then define the term significant. You've already conceded what it is.
Like, I guess like a large amount, sufficiently great. I don't know what you're asking here. Like, I didn't want to play a definition game or like some gotcha. Like, is there any way that we can pull ourselves out of like the debate bro mode and actually?
I do want to get into like the actual people are chat kind of thing.
That's fine. We can move on. I just want to say that anyone like what happens here is it's hard to hit a moving target, right? And so if you acknowledge, yes, I too am arguing for significant.
Here's the thing, right? You're treating me like I'm a target.
Hold on one sec. Just to hear Rob finish the sentence.
Yeah. So if you just say, yes, I too am arguing for significant reforms, just significant reforms that are basically the opposite direction of what you're arguing, I think that's fine. And then we can have that discussion so that the audience can make up for themselves. Which way should we significantly reform the food stamp program? That's it. That's all I'm trying to get to. Because otherwise I feel like if I spend time arguing against some of your proposals, that the interpretation will still be like, well, that's okay. Then Rob's arguing against significant reform anyways. And so therefore the prompt is still negative. That's all I'm getting to.
So you're treating it like it's a like that I am a target to shoot at. It's not a target to shoot at.
Okay.
The idea is that we discuss what happens, and then we can determine, what's a better idea or what's a worse idea. So overall, like I've heard, it sounded like that you kind of wanted to pull back on Snap overall. Would you agree with that?
That is true. I think that anyone with a reasonable interpretation could see that, seeing as how half of your opening statement was talking about reforms that presumably would add a bunch of money into Snap.
Okay.
I think that they could see that that's significant reform. I'm now willing to talk about why my significant reforms are better than your significant reforms.
Okay. Well, for the junk food thing, there's actually no empirical evidence that results in beneficial outcomes, because exactly what you had just said has been tried in the past, and it did not impact people's behavior when it came to purchasing of junk food.
Okay. So
the problem that I'm having is that SNAP benefits, economically speaking, provides a net boon that has cascading effects in the positive direction. For every dollar that's put in to SNAP benefits, it's anywhere between $1.50 to $1.80 return in gross domestic product. Would you say then that is something worthy of not pushing back on?
No. Explain what GDP is.
Gross domestic product?
Correct.
Do you need the formula?
Explain to me. Just give me, you could give me the formula if you like. I'm just asking your own words to tell me what gross domestic product is. What's it seeking to measure?
It's CGINP. Like what is your,
what's it seeking to measure is the question I have.
I like, this is not, again, you're
let me tell okay. First,
you're going debate bro
that's
mode.
fine.
I'm not asking, like, I'm not coming at you with like definitional responses. Let's test your muster in what you know in rote knowledge. I'm trying to get to you or talk with you about specific benefits where we can observe specific boons versus busts. I would personally like to see an economy that does better as opposed to worse. Wouldn't you?
Okay. So here's what I'll say. Since you're unwilling to tell us that, I'll tell you a little joke.
Why didn't you just answer
I'll tell
the
you a
question?
little joke,
Hold
right? Two economists are walking through the forest. Economist A sees a pile of shit on the forest floor. He looks over at economist B and says, "I'll pay you $100 to eat that pile of shit." So the second economist reaches down, grabs the pile of shit, and eats it. First economist gives him $100. They take a few more steps and they see another pile of shit. Economist B looks at economist A and goes, "I'll pay you $100 to eat that pile of shit." Economist A reaches down, eats it. Economist B gives him $100. They start walking a little bit more, and economist A looks over at B and goes, "You know what? I can't feel like we just each ate a pile of shit for nothing. I gave you $100 and you gave me the same 100 back." And economist B looks at economist A and goes, "That's not true. We just increased GDP by $100. When you factor in and talk about GDP, including government spending as a net benefit because it increases GDP, it is laughable. You are correct that number does entail government spending, but it's not entailing what we should look to benefit our society, which is productivity that's coming from individuals working. The government printing money and handing it out and then saying, look, people are spending the money we are handing out and that increases GDP is laughable. If anything, the net benefit or the net implication of this is that it will drive up food costs for the rest of us because it's increasing demand for the limited food that we have by having people use this money that's not theirs to have more sugary items and items that aren't staples and necessary to them. Every dollar that we could limit through the government spending there would not only be tax dollars that we could either give back to people so that they could spend it and actually have productive spending, it could also be used on more productive systems. I would propose that at the bare minimum, we could have a significant reform of eliminating 20% of SNAP benefits to families last sentence, if they're using it on soda, which they do not need.
Okay, yeah. So your idea is that you're appropriating GDP, which is you're going to be talking about its consumer spending plus investments plus what is it, government spending, and then plus net exports, which is exports minus imports. And you're equivocating the United States economy to two economists eating shit.
You got it.
Okay,
yes, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Okay, and you find these perfectly analogous.
That is correct. What I'm saying is
okay,
that the humor
I'm in reality world.
Give me 1 second. What I'm saying is the humorous
referring
joke.
To the largest economy on planet Earth, not two economists eating shit. It's not as simple as just one guy eating shit and then handing over money to another guy eating shit, and then you have a net positive. That's not how that works.
What it is, would that not be an increase in 100? In that scenario,
no,
if the government, okay, I just want to be clear. If the government,
literally not what that means.
If the government,
I mean, like,
you could keep
I thought you were a. Hold on, you talked a lot. You talked a lot.
I do want to.
You just compared the entire United States economy.
Hate to interrupt, but what we'll do is I'll give you a chance to wrap up, First Amender, because I know that you're saying, hey, like Rob got to kind of lay out his case there, but I want to lay out mine. And then we'll kick it right back over to Rob.
Okay. It is not a response to say, well, economy, just like two economists taking a shit in the woods and then they trade money amongst one another. We're talking about the United States economy, the largest economy in the world. Obviously, these are not analogous. And so it's not an answer that the fact that SNAP benefits actually offer a net boon to society. I mean, I could just explain to you, by having access to food, people often either they purchase other things. There's more demand for the food, which means that there's often farmers producing more food, which means more money for the farmers. And because people don't have to worry as much about food, they can then focus on other things, which also benefits the economy. This is empirically proven. You can look at if you don't like GDP, well then fine, I don't care. You can look at MVPF that also shows a similar net gain to its loss. So we know for a fact SNAP benefits offers a net boon. Wouldn't you agree that that's what happens?
No, that's not what is going on. The fact that you use GDP as this metric is what is laughable. Now, you could deny and say,
I don't have to use that.
You could deny and say that it's not analogous. With the joke that I told, but the joke is intended for average people that don't understand what GDP to understand how absurd it is to include government spending on a metric of some sort of productive spending for our society. For example, if the government tomorrow decided to print $1 billion extra and then give all of that money to Elon Musk as spending for, quote, tech research, that would have increased our GDP by $1 billion. The idea that because our tax money that's coming from productive people, that the private sector would use that money that would be better in order to produce things for society and benefits for society is then taken from us in the form of taxes, then given to people who wastefully spend on unhealthy things such as soda, which then leads to them more likely to get diabetes, which then leads to us being more likely to spend on Medicaid, which leads to them being more likely to be hospitalized. Every step along the way increases GDP there. Our spending on Medicaid for them to go to the doctor because of diabetes is an increase in GDP. Our spending for them to buy soda is an increase in GDP. This is a terrible metric to look at it. The idea that this would be fungible in the sense that if we give poor people money to buy frivolous things such as soda, that means they'll be able to spend their dollars on something else and thereby spur the economy, shows that would be better ahead not to give them the money for soda in the first place. If you can't have it both ways. If your argument's going to be, well, the real way that this affects the economy is by giving them money for soda and things like this, then they're capable to go out and maybe buy a new car, or they're going to buy CDs or DVD players or computer games or something, and that spurs the economy in this way, is laughable. Instead, we should allow the people that are being productive to purchase the things that are more necessities for them, which means that they'll spend things that are beneficial for society. And these people wouldn't need that spending if they're able to fungibly go spend it on other things. Instead of buying CDs, DVD players, video games, they could use the money that was being spent by our tax dollars on soda in order for them to purchase their own soda. The last thing I'll say is, you keep saying, well, the metrics show that this doesn't cause them to make better choices. Then that's on them. I think that if we did this over a long enough time, these people, especially if we limited to these products not being able to do things that in the past studies you're talking about did, like allow them to buy sugary beverages like fruit juice, but instead limit it like we do with WIC, milk, bread, cheese, meats, beans, rice. If we limit to those sorts of things, they won't have the option to go out and be unhealthy except for their own dollars. And that means that if they then choose with their own dollars to buy these sugary treats, they didn't need the money in the first place.
We're going to go and give First Amendment about 2.5 minutes as well. That's about what we're breaking down to.
So unfortunately, you're wrong, just completely. I have to share my screen. you don't know what you're talking about, unfortunately. I'd like to say that you did know what you're talking about, but you've done zero research on this. It's clear to me. I'm going to provide the paper right here. Give me a second while I provide it on my stream as well. I need to do so. Sorry, just give me a moment. I appreciate your patience. Can you see what I'm looking at here?
Yes.
Okay, so to assess the benefits of early childhood access to food stamps relative to the cost of the program, the team followed a framework that calculates what is called the marginal value of public funds. So you didn't like GDP, fine, doesn't matter. We can pull up the marginal value of public funds. The MVPF is the ratio of benefit of the policy to its recipients of the net cost to the government. The researchers found that the MVPF of childhood food stamps program is approximately 56, which means that the program ultimately offsets the government's upfront costs. When analyzing the individual components of the Economic Self-Sufficiency Index, we find that childhood exposure to food stamps reduces the likelihood that individuals receive income from public programs as adults, says co-author Hilary Hoynes, professor of public policy and economics at the University of California, Berkeley. This implies that the social safety net for families with young children may, in part, pay for itself by reducing reliance on government support in the long term. Bailey Hoyes, co-authors of Stanford University and the University of California, Berkeley, and the results appear as a working paper in the National Bureau of Economic Research. So we know it's a net benefit. We know this for a fact.
Okay, unfortunately for you, nothing that was said there disputes any of the significant reforms that I'm suggesting making. None of those studies would entail stopping sending money for things like sugary beverages. By the way, most studies will also show you that when children are consuming things like potato chips, soda, and I remind you, soda is the number one item that is purchased on food stamps. In fact, food stamps households are more likely to purchase junk food and soda than households that aren't on food stamps, which is sort of counterintuitive. You would assume if they're so desperate and looking for a positive nutrition that they would actually be spending it on these staples. By eliminating the ability to spend on those things, this isn't eliminating children's ability to get access to healthy food. Quite to the contrary. Intuitively, we would see that if they're getting healthier foods through food stamps, that they would actually be even more less likely in the future to end up on the very government programs that you're suggesting. For example, we could see access to soda, according to the data that I was showing, increases your likelihood to have diabetes by about 1/3. This is also true of children that are more likely to not only have childhood diabetes, which is a growing problem in this country, particularly with people on the poor end of the scale that get SNAP benefits, but also their chances of developing diabetes when they get into adulthood. So what you've done is cite a study based on the significant reform that I'm not suggesting. The reform that I'm talking about at this point is we should limit the purchases to things such as staples, such as the food groups that scientists agree are the things that would be best, not just for adults, but for children. Can you explain to me why these studies would entail, why it would be a bad thing for children to be drinking things such as milk, water, flavored water, and things like that instead of soda?
Yeah, so the effort to improve the health by limiting access to unhealthy foods, it sounds intuitive and it seems like it works. But when we attempt doing this, we find out that they don't actually change their behavior. They still end up purchasing unhealthy foods. The problem is that when you are poor, you often end up choosing unhealthy things. This is just a factor of poor socioeconomic conditions. Now, as to what you can do about that, well, I mean, number one, just like from a basis, I don't think that like poor people should be like be prevented from having access to, say, unhealthy foods, just as like somebody who's middle or upper class would consume unhealthy things. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you, Rob. You don't look like you follow your own advice.
Well, you look like a virgin, so I don't know how much advice we should take from someone.
I'm not a virgin.
You. The idea.
The point that I'm trying to make with you is that you make an argument that the poor should not be having these unhealthy foods, but you don't seem to follow that advice.
I thank you very much for that. I don't think I'm following the advice of you should have to pay for my poor decisions. You're absolutely right. You're very intuitively pointing out that I could actually lose some weight. Now, might I suggest to you that you look like someone who could use some advice when you're suggesting that other people haven't researched this, that perhaps you should think twice before saying that and getting embarrassed in a debate, as will happen tonight. By the way, you've already conceded the prompt within the first 5 minutes in your opening statement. Nonetheless, me making bad choices on my own is an absolute choice that every American should have the right to make. Yes, including people on food stamps absolutely should have access. Please be quiet.
I do need to let Rob finish. I need to let Rob finish.
People that are on food stamps absolutely have the right to soda. They may purchase it with their own money. They are not entitled for me to purchase that for them any more than they should be able to use their food stamps to buy alcohol, to buy cigarettes, or any other things.